Hi everyone, Jacquie Edwards here. Thank you so much for joining me today. I think it's Thursday. Yes, definitely Thursday. Sorry, my hair is a bit funny. I had my massage this morning instead of this afternoon because I'm off to London later this afternoon. So for any of you ladies out there that are looking for something to do tonight in London, we're having our Professional Spring networking event. So if you check out professionalspring.com, you can see more information about that. But we're really looking forward to it. I think we've only got 1 or 2 spaces left. So it's going to be a great night. So I'm getting ready to go and do that this afternoon. But first, I'm here to do live at lunchtime. And you'll probably have noticed that live at lunchtime didn't happen yesterday. Unfortunately, my internet's been really terrible lately. I don't know what's going on, but it's probably just the whole village life thing. So I couldn't get a strong enough connection to stay connected to do a live video. But today, things seem to be going better. So today I wanted to talk a bit about branding, and this is something that we covered at my event this past weekend with Roger Hamilton, and he's got some really amazing ideas, and some of those, we've kind of borrowed and worked with in our Jade Simplicity business around the 8 stages of business growth. So one of the things that a lot of people want to start with in their business, and then they think it's kind of the most important step one project, is getting their branding. So getting your logo, your company name, all of that kind of thing designed, setting up your letterhead, your website, making everything look like it matches and really good. And those are nice things to have, but they're not the first thing that you should be working on in any business. So when we look at kind of the 8 stages of business growth, the very first stage is called proven concept. And this basically is your proof of concept model. And our mentor, Roger Hamilton, basically says if you haven't got a customer, which means if you haven't made a sale, so if you haven't got money from somebody for your product or your service, then you haven't got a business. And that needs to be the absolute first step. So you need to know that somebody wants the product or the service that you have to offer, and you need to know how to sell that product. Because if you haven't got a business, or if you haven't got a customer, you haven't got a business, and there's no point working on all branding. So the very first thing you need to do is get a customer. So in terms of your business, sorry, I'm just going to keep looking at my notes. In terms of your business, that means you need to do your marketing. So you have to have your business idea, of course, first, but you need to do your marketing. And that's when your potential customers will be doing their browsing. They are looking for something that solves their problem, whether it's a product or a service. So you need to get information out there about your product and service. You need to have a lot of content, a lot of material, so that they can find you easily and they can understand what it is that you have to offer. So first step is marketing. It doesn't need to be branded marketing. It doesn't need to have beautiful colored logos. It doesn't need to have all of that stuff. You just want to get information out there so that you can see if somebody wants that information, basically, and if somebody might be interested in a product around it. The next step, so after you've got people browsing and looking at your stuff, then you want to move into the sales phase. And it doesn't have to be a hard sale, but you want to get somebody buying your stuff. And that's when you'll get moving through kind of that proven concept. The very first stage is as soon as somebody buys your stuff. Now, once somebody's bought your product or your service, and this is going to be slightly different for kind of all the different products and services, so this might not be quite as applicable to some things, but the next step is the delivery. And there's a couple of different things to think about in the delivery, and most important is around the customer experience. So how is the customer experiencing that delivery? How are they going to get the most benefit out of it? And if you've got kind of a product or service that is something that the customer needs to use or do, how are you making sure that they're actually using your product or using your service? So it's one thing for somebody to pay money for something. It's another for them to actually do something then. So if you look at books, lots and lots of people buy books. The statistic we got was 70 to 80% of people that will buy a book won't actually read that book. So what are you doing to make sure that somebody, reads your book basically, or uses your product or your service? And that's all part of that delivery module, and it's part of getting your proven concept together, because you want to make sure not only is somebody, looking at your stuff, buying your product, but you want them to actually be using your product. Because if they're not using your product, they're never going to buy anything else from you if they don't use that first thing. So they don't actually see the value in, reading your book, using your service. As you get them to use the product, use that service, then you're in kind of service mode. So you're really focusing on building up the trust and the loyalty with that customer. And this is where we start tipping over. So once you start building up that loyalty and that trust, that customer is going to be more willing to buy your other products and services. So if you've got a bit of you should have more than one product. So because it's a lot easier to sell to somebody that uses your first product, so somebody that you've already sold to, than somebody that's completely new. So, but if they're not using your product, if they're not loving your service, then they're not going to buy anything else. So you really want to focus all on the customer, making their experience as good as possible. And that's all stage one of the 8 stages of business growth. So that's what you should really be focusing on first before you do anything with branding. So we got marketing, sales, delivery, and service. And the kind of customer flow is they're browsing, they're buying, they're testing, and they're trusting. Then once you've got to that trust phase where they're loyal, they love your service, they love your product, then you start looking into branding. But you're not the one doing the branding. Ideally, it's your customer giving you your brand and doing the branding for you. So you want them to be living your product or your service. You want them to be what they think about. So the example that we've given, so my mentor, Roger Hamilton, he has a personality test called Wealth Dynamics. And Wealth Dynamics has different profiles, basically. So how he knows he's got a brand is when people start saying, I'm a creator, which is basically the profile that's come out of the assessment. So as soon as somebody takes an assessment and says, I am a creator or I am a supporter, then they're associating themselves with that brand. And that's when you know you've got that good customer base, you've got that brand, you've got their loyalty and their trust. And they're becoming the brand for you. So they're out there telling people, I'm a supporter. And people are like, what's a supporter? And they say, oh, I've taken this awesome profiling test. And then they tell them all about it. So while it's nice to have a colorful logo and a great company name and make sure, your website looks beautiful and has, every page is perfectly on brand and colored, those are good things to have, but they shouldn't be the first thing you're working on. And this is where I see a lot of people get stuck when they first get started with their business, is they want to have their brand all set up and identified from the very beginning before they've even got a product. Or for rent to rent, like my business, the business model is there, but you don't need to have that full brand profile before you've got kind of your first customer coming in. Yes, you want to have a website, you want to be able to do your marketing properly and look professional, but you don't need to spend hundreds and thousands of pounds on websites and logo designs. You just need to pick a company name. You can change it later. Most people aren't really going to notice that much until you really start to gain traction. So don't spend all of your time getting started with the branding. Spend it getting out there and getting customers. And then once you've got the customers and the loyalty, they'll give you your brand. So hopefully that was interesting and you followed that. It's a bit easier with diagrams and stuff, but as we've seen from before, it's hard to do diagrams on here because Facebook Live, for some reason, flips the text backwards. Don't quite know why, but it's how it works. So yeah, thank you very much for joining me today. Again, I'm off to London tonight, so any of the ladies out there, come and join us at Professional Spring. And yeah, I'll see you tomorrow for Live at Lunchtime.